actually have a month as Africans where we can celebrate just being Africa, and where we can reflect on what we can do as a society, as a nation, together. So today, that is the conversation we are going to have. I'm just trying to go live on YouTube. Just hang on a second. Right. Okay. I don't know, nowadays Zoom as it looks. Right, there we go. There's something I was trying to wait for, but I think we shall go ahead and just kick off the session. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned in to Get It Right with Atara Solutions. Get It Right with Atara Solutions is a webinar series that seeks to demystify issues in employment and entrepreneurship. And we have been doing this since COVID time in June. We started off in June 2020. And we are here on season 6. Fortunately for us, our seasons are almost a whole year. And so we are honored this morning and the privilege to be bringing these conversations to you every Tuesday, and just trying to demystify issues that employers and employees go through, and making sure that we are also growing as employers and as employees, because we cannot have the failure of businesses that the statistics have, and there's something we can do about it. So Get It Right with Atara Solutions is a webinar series that seeks to demystify issues in employment and entrepreneurship. It is brought to you by Atara Solutions in a partnership with a number of organizations. But before we get there, allow me to recognize the presence of my co-host, Madam Catherine Sidandi, who is our sign language interpreter. She supports us in being inclusive and just making sure that we are engaged and we are not leaving anyone behind. So Catherine Sidandi, if you have an event that requires sign language interpretation, you don't even require any event that you're hosting. You need to make sure that you're bringing in a sign language interpreter so that you can also support the hearing impaired, and making sure that you're also making a difference in the society. So that is what Catherine Sidandi does here on Get It Right with Atara Solutions. Besides Catherine Sidandi, we have our other partners. My co-host Richard Magoma, I don't know where he's at today, but he has been kind enough to host the last couple of sessions. Thank you very much, Richard Magoma, for that. And of course, the team at Atara Solutions, we appreciate you. We have several organizations that we work with. We have Pathway Solution Services, which is a HR consulting and training company. They actually have a lot of content on their learning management system, which is LMS. So if you're looking to train yourself slowly at the comfort of your home or your office, then you can sign up for the LMS that is offered by Pathway Solution Services, which is headed by Frank Wambari. He will be our speaker sometime in June. And then we have Panessa Training Institute. If you're looking to become a woodworking, if you're looking to harness your woodworking skills, then Panessa Training Institute are your people. They actually have an intake for May 25th for both Saturday classes and weekday classes. We have Wicklin. Wicklin is a carpet cleaning and sofa cleaning company. They have a machine that cleans sofas within 6 minutes. We have Kapula Mintito. Kapula Mintito is a coastal snacks company. They're located in Mombasa, and they sell vipochopocho vya pwani. That is the coastal snacks, your cashew nuts, your mabuyu, your kashata, among others. Then we have Steadfast Quality Solutions. Steadfast Quality Solutions is a HR consulting and public relations company. This one is based in Kampala, Uganda. This is headed by our good friend, Mr. Herbert Zake, who supports us and makes sure that we have Uganda represented on the Get It Right with Atara Solutions webinar series. And we have Profiles International. We are privileged today to be hosting the MD of Profiles International, who was also kind enough to let me know that it's actually Africa Month and we needed to do something about it. So what they do is they are the only people in Africa who have Genos Emotional Intelligence course. So if you're looking to become an emotional intelligence coach, you need to take the certification with Profiles International. We also have a good thing coming up. There's a launch coming up for something else this Thursday, and we will be sure to let you know what that is all about. We have Elsamere. Elsamere is a hotel located in Naivasha. It has one of the most beautiful views I have been to. It is very serene. By the way, for anyone who is looking to write a book, please go and camp at Elsamere. You're gonna love it. But if you're looking to take a bikecation, solocation, whatever cation you want to take, if you're looking for for a place where you can hang out with your friends, then Elsamere will be your place. They actually have a museum that they tell the story of Elsa. Elsa is a lion. And then we have Nilefront cottages. Nilefront cottages are cottages located in Uganda, Jinja. That is one of the most beautiful places I've been to in the other side of Kampala. Jinja is so beautiful. And then Nilefront cottages are actually, the view from Nilefront is where the Lake Victoria meets River Nile. It is such an awesome view, and their sunsets and sunrises. Oh my God. You can actually drive that from Nairobi to Nilefront cottages. It's Jinja. It's 2 hours from the border to Uganda. And then we have Labor Planet. Labor Planet do manpower outsourcing. If you're looking to get casuals or labor outsourcing, then you need to get in touch with Labor Planet. We have Liaison Group, we have Essence Park, we have Star Discovery, and we have K-Square HR Services. K-Square HR Services are located in Rwanda. They are our partners in Rwanda. Thank you very much, Steve Karangwa, for your partnership. And we keep growing together because we are making a difference. And of course, my favorite part of this season is we are organizing a meet and greet, Nyama na Kusalimiana, a meet and greet for men in Nairobi. We have a men's hangout, and our theme is natural born leaders. Every man is expected to provide leadership at some points, even at home. But are they really leaders? What are we doing to harness their leadership skills? Because leadership is actually a skill that you need to develop as you grow. So the theme is natural born leaders, the modern authentic man. This date is 22nd of June, and we are going to be releasing the flyer with further details by end of day tomorrow. So please, any man on the call and you have access to Nairobi, welcome to the men's hangout meet and greet that will be taking place on Saturday, the 22nd of June. And we will be sharing with you more details on that. I was hoping to get the Festac details, but I'm sure Engineer Yinka will be happy to share with us what that is all about. So allow us to jump onto the meat of the day. Today we are discussing Africa. Yes, Richard, I see you. Thank you very much for being there. I have seen Jacinta Kisungi. I've seen quite a number of people. Thank you very much for joining us and for choosing to be with Get It Right this evening. So with us are 3 panelists. We have Engineer Yinka, we have Engineer James, and we have architect, allow me to call you that, Vicky. We were making fun just before we went live that it is the construction people who are actually very passionate about this Africa. What have you seen in our bricks, my good friends? As we see houses, you guys, you're seeing Africa. You need to define and tell us, what are some of the things that you have seen? Vicky today is not here. She's here with her other cap where she's the president of COMESA. And of course, James Mwangi has been talking to me about Africa. Every time he comes back from FIDIC, I get a lecture on the opportunities we have in Africa. And of course, Engineer Yinka is here with Festac. They're organizing a festivity to celebrate Africa. So we are in the right place, and allow me to just welcome them to introduce themselves and also tell us what are your thoughts about the Africa Month. And probably because I can see Yinka on the call, allow me to spotlight you guys. Just 1 second. Yes, Yinka, you can go first. Now I can see you, James, as well.
Good evening, everyone, and thank to Grace. Actually, when you were talking introduction, number one, I'm glad James is always, beating you up on the Africanism and Africa Month. Number two, I'm glad we are doing this Africa Month. But I think number three, more than anything else for me, you actually mentioned what happened to you starting the Atara Solutions during COVID. And I'm going to make some mention into that because those things are really big and pertinent into where we are here today. As you all can see, my name is Yinka Abioye. I'm the chairman of Festac Africa Festival. Well, I would say I was a chemical engineer, and I worked in a lot of industries, pharmaceuticals, petroleum, petrocatalyst, manufacturing, and on and on. My last corporate work was with a company called ExxonMobil, and I always like to tell my Kenyan friends, one of the things that make me a very vital Kenyan is I was part of the people that brought in chicken in and pizza into Kenya around 1990, about 24, 25 years ago. So you guys should give me a lot of kudos for having access to this type of food. Africa Month, it's such an important time, which is also why we brought Festac to Kenya, specifically Kisumu. If you allow me, because it's important that I take the time to, since we are talking Africa Month, to sensitize all of us to the power of our continent that we might be living out. The Festac Africa Festival was started in 1966 by our leaders back then to do Pan-Africanism and link all of us together. The festival died for 11 years. It was done again in 1977, and it died for 45 years after 1977. What made us bring it back was exactly what Grace was talking about, that during COVID, the world zeroed everything. So at that time, we saw an opportunity and a platform to bring all of us together. And there is no better way than doing arts and culture, travel, tourism, networking, togetherness within all of us to make the continent a better one. We'll be talking some more during the discussions, and I can say some more without taking too much of the time. Welcome, everyone. It's going to be a wonderful ride this evening, talking about Africa, because that's the passion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that intro. And I love, congratulations on bringing back Festac. And I look forward to, you said Kisumu is when?
We've actually, because of the flooding in the villages or the cities around Kisumu, we have actually released a press release yesterday to postpone the festival in coordination, collaboration, and compassion for the people around Kisumu. Festival has been postponed to August 25th to September 1st. The plans and the schedule stays the same. As a matter of fact, I should say this, in thanking people all over the world, people have been supportive in our change of the date, and we are actually getting more people signing up for the festival. So everybody online, I don't care where you are in the world, pack your bags. August 25th to September 1st, you need to be in Kisumu. Thank you.
Let me just mention, I'm a very good moderator. I could do something for in support of the program, but yes. It's not a sales day today. Maybe we can move on to the other engineer. I am telling you today, hey, if you hear me speaking English of the nose, just know I'm around people with titles.
Okay, so thank you very much, Grace. My name is Engineer James Mwangi. I'm a consultant, primarily focusing in the area of energy, oil and gas, and also matters to do with policy in those two sectors. I've spent many years in the energy and petroleum sectors, both here and out of the country. And currently, I run a consulting firm that is based here in Nairobi. Beyond that, I am also active in advocacy matters, and I'm privileged to sit on the board of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and also in matters to do with the international professional organizations. I'm also privileged to sit on the board of what is called the International Federation of Consulting Engineers as a vice president. Beyond that, I have participated in many projects on the African continent. And I've seen the impact of those projects to the life of the people that are impacted by those particular projects. I think this is the time for Africa to rise, and more importantly, to recalibrate in terms of determining their journey going forward. I think one of the key things that we certainly see is the huge population of young adults below the age of 30, and I believe they're somewhere in the region of 70%. This enormous potential must be harnessed, must be brought to the table of discussion of opportunities. And I think it is critical for Africa to focus on a common agenda. And lastly, I'm very cognizant of Africa Union Agenda 2063 and the aspirations that are contained in that agenda. And to me, what we should be looking at is focusing our energy and enhancing the rate at which we are progressing towards achieving those aspirations. Otherwise, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer James. And we can move on to Vicky.
Thank you, Grace. Lovely to be here as well. I have, of course, my background in architecture, like you have said, being the first profession that I found the world of work in, having worked for about 20 or so years before deciding to jump ship and come to the area of people development. And the area of people development for me was primarily because I see this as a primary and foundational intervention if we are really to change the mindsets that will govern the next Africa or will be the leaders of the next Africa. And I really cherish the work that I do here, which we call, we are a part of molding the culture of the future in our own little way. But today I'm here in my capacity as the president of the COMESA Federation of Women in Business, the Kenyan chapter. And I must say that before getting into this post, I think I was very much like other Kenyans, complain about everything that's wrong and that's wrong. But when you start to go around Africa, you realize the enormous potential that we have. And even more so, you start looking at Africa in terms of facts. It's no longer about the little bubble that you sit in. You're able to access information about Africa that is mind-boggling, and I must say that not only the resources but even the strides that we have made. It is definitely, as Engineer Yinka and James say, it is our time as Africa to rise. We just need, I guess, to do the work that is required. And so, happy to be here. It was Engineer Yinka who told me about Africa Month, and immediately I had that. I remember telling Grace, I said, we must sensitize people about Africa Month. I mean, if I don't know about Africa Month myself, how many others don't know? So as Profiles International, we've been running a series of posts, videos on our social channels. We've mentioned Festac, just to start raising that awareness about Africa Month. And I'm hoping the people on this call, when they leave here, you will go and post something about Africa, say something in this month about Africa, and raise that awareness. Back to you, Grace.
Thank you, Vicky. And thank you for, in Kenya, we say kunichanua, combing me. That is direct translation for enlightening in slang. But allow us to just jump into the discussion. And I want to ask you, Engineer James Mwangi, how can African countries effectively leverage their natural resources to drive economic growth? And this is while ensuring sustainability and environmental protection. Tell you what, I was having a conversation today about the value of sustainability and what is happening in the mining industry and where we are actually losing it at. And I was talking to somebody whose county is backed by mining as an economic hub. However, they have quite big numbers of poverty-stricken Kenyans. So where have we lost it? At what point did we lose it? And what can we do?
Right. Thank you, Grace. Last week, I attended an engineering partnership convention that was held at a local university here in Kenya, Dedan Kimathi University of Technology. And in one of the key presentations there was what I would call a shocking statistic. And it was to the effect that the quantum of value that we get out of our natural resources is, to say the least, appalling. The statistic that was given is that by selling raw materials, key amongst them minerals, for minerals, it was estimated that we get something, or Africa gets something in the order of magnitude of 2% of what the ultimate value of that commodity is. Now, it is not how accurate how that statistic is, but it's the fact that from the order of magnitude, it is below 10%. Raw agriculture, if it is coffee, the statistics that was given was something in the order of 5%, which means that the farmer and all the other service providers within the country from where this is being exported are scrambling for 5% of the value. And somebody else who doesn't have that raw material takes it and adds value and realizes that enormous value from those raw resources. So what does that tell us? Is that the game must now change, and change quickly, such that we have capacity to do what we call value addition. Those raw materials should be leaving this country in their finished form, and we can then have systems to penetrate the market out there by having that commodity leave here in finished form. That means that we are looking at enhancing our industrial capacity, enhancing innovative solutions to extract value from those raw materials. And importantly, because we have a huge population in Africa of, I think, something in the order of 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion, that in itself is a vast market for those materials. I'm sure you have heard about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area that is looking at having Africa as one big trading area, just like we have the European Union. We bring down the trade barriers to allow these commodities to move up and down to the markets within this continent, even as we look at tapping international markets. Today, if you look at our countries, including ours, there is a huge disparity between the value of the things we import from what we export. And obviously what we import is significantly higher than what we export. And that is because you're exporting stuff whose value is low. Therefore, there has to be policies put in place. There has to be what I would call incentives for us to do this value addition in this country. And you know, one of the things that we do is that we then tap into this huge population of the youth. So our education system should be tailor-made towards this youth, not only being involved in value additions, but also coming up with solutions. Then number two, we are good in the service industry, and we have potential again from those youth. So I think that we must believe that we can get the solutions here ourselves. We must try, and we ourselves look at investing in those areas that are not traditional. Today, people invest in whether it is real estate and sometimes luxury things, but it's a high time that we had an environment where we would invest in creating these solutions, getting value from these natural resources, and I dare say in a sustainable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, James. I think that conversation is live, and especially currently where we have a lot of investors who are coming into Kenya. I was listening to a speaker the other day who was talking about the amount, they are #1 exporters of coffee from their country, but we are also #1 exporters of our raw coffee into their country. And I was just thinking to myself, so where exactly is the disconnect? Is it that we don't think out of the box? And is it that we are not creative? Because, I mean, have you seen the avocado farming that has started in this country? It's become like, it's another quail business. Everyone has gone into avocado and everyone just farms. No one is doing value addition. So I like what you have said, and probably maybe Yinka can tell us.
Before he does that, Grace, I would like to say that I'm planting avocados, so tread carefully with that remark.
Please value
Sorry
add.
about that.
Please value add. I mean, I am eating all the avocados I can, but I need avocado oil for my hair. I need avocado oil to eat. I take avocado powder. You can crush the seeds and make avocado powder, which is an antioxidant. I mean, there's so many things you can do besides just avocado. I am sure there's something you can do with avocado. Ngozi, what do we call ngozi of avocado in English? That one. That one, yes. Yinka, probably you can tell us what are some of the innovative ways that can be fostered across different sectors in Africa to address the challenges and seize emerging opportunities? Yinka, you're on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Can you hear me? Okay. No, I was talking what my brother Jay was just talking about, because I think this is the biggest thing as a concern for us as the people that are using Africa as a platform to bring us together and improve.
Engineer your internet. You're buffering. We can barely hear what you're saying.
What you say?
You're buffering. Your internet is unstable.
Okay, now?
Now I can hear you.
Okay. Is it better now? Can you hear me now?
No. There's a buffer.
Oh. Right to
No, we cannot hear you, engineer. Maybe. No, we can't. We totally cannot hear you. It's buffering seriously. So maybe as you sort that out,
can you go to someone else?
Yes.
Can you go to someone? Wow.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do. So as you sort that out, maybe we can go to Vicky, who can also tell us about Africa, because I know she's very passionate about Africa. So Vicky, what are some of the successful examples of initiatives or projects in Africa that have effectively harnessed opportunities for growth and development? And what are some of the lessons we can learn from them?
I think there have been quite a few. Some of them, of course, pushed not by the Africans, but there are some pushed by Africans. The biggest one being, of course, M-Pesa. Everyone talks about M-Pesa, what M-Pesa has done, how it has revolutionized payments. And would you believe it? I think it was in February, I was in Tunisia for something. And over the radio, I kept hearing Kenya, Kenya, Kenya. And because I was speaking in French, I didn't understand what they were saying, and Arabic. And then so I asked the person I was with, what are they saying? And they said that Kenya is a cashless economy. They don't even pay things by cash. They just, money just flies. And he was asking me, so how does money just fly in the air? And you guys are just transacting. How do you access? And I told him, can you believe it? I can't remember a time when I didn't do that because it is so second nature now. But the discussion on the radio was about how that is not possible. We should look at the stats. And I realized that M-Pesa really did realize the way people do things. And to the fact that it's now a case study. So it was just interesting to hear that conversation from, it was like, the way you walk down the road and you're listening to KBC and you're just hearing your country being mentioned randomly. At some point you're thinking, hey, have we done something wrong? Because sometimes we're in the news for all the wrong reasons. But this was a positive for this time. We have Vivo just the other day that was launched in AmCham. If you remember, there was a summit at Windsor. And they started small. They started by just importing clothes. They went into manufacturing. They grew. I think they are in a few countries. I remember they were recognized in South Africa the other day as a growing business. And now they're one of in their own way, they're moving now to the US. They're exporting what we can offer, of course, taking advantage of the local textiles that we have not in Kenya, but in West Africa. I know they bring in a lot of their fabric from the West Africans who do a lot of that. And that's just another example. I do believe we have other examples. For example, in Ghana, we have the cocoa farm. I don't remember what it was, what the name was, but they do manufacture and value add. I remember I saw a documentary on it where they're talking about bringing in cocoa beans from the local manufacturers and actually adding value and selling back as chocolates and everything to the population. So we are not short of examples. We're not short of people who have dared to go forth and do something about being innovative. We have many programs. We have Nollywood. Yeah, Nollywood supplies the rest of the world with drama. So, and by Nollywood, I mean Nigeria. So you're not short. And, they came and they decided that they were going to be in that space. And look at what has happened now. We have entertainment, rich entertainment. We have music from Nigeria that is collaborated with the world famous people. I mean, look at that. And it just starts from, this is the way I see it. It always starts from someone doing something somehow rudimentary, learning the art, because there's no shortcut, pushing through, getting better, studying the West. That's another thing. How have they been so good at this thing? And the next thing you know, we have quite a bit of things, I think a few success stories. I cannot name all of them. I find when you go to, when we go to the women trade fairs, you find women who have started extracting oils and they are exporting to Europe. Yeah, our baobab oil, they're extracting castor, not so much, but baobab is what I know is really, really rich. They have a lot of turmeric and all those other things. And they come together in an incubation facility. And you find the sad story sometimes that it's one person who then is able to export and take the value added product to the outside. But we are not short of stories in terms of what we have in Africa. Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct. And I tell you, I've seen our own SCZs and EPZAs. People are starting to have a lot of interest in that line of work, and just making sure that we are not only relying on foreigners, we are also doing it ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's very encouraging for us. When you mention music, let us recognize Sauti Sol, Soul Generation, Soul Kids. Absolutely. Sauti Sol has actually sold Kenya to places. Oh my God. Thank you, Onyango, for that. And Helen says, yes, engineer could switch off his video. Oh, meanwhile, Kenya is experiencing buffering internet on and off because of the deep sea fiber cut. That's true. He actually will be joining us. Yinka, are you still there?
I think he's dropped off a little bit.
Okay, I can see him on the call, but his video is off.
Oh, okay. And
so
someone has said I should remember the athletes as well who have put us on the map. I mean, there you go. They have brought people from outside to also give us shoes and all those things. We have I guess sometimes what I usually think about is a catch-22, because sometimes we have people from the outside. And this is, I think, my biggest lesson so far, is that because of our ceiling in knowledge, because you have to call it that, because of our ceiling in knowledge, sometimes we don't see the potential that we have. And so it takes people who have seen more to come here and realize what needs to happen. Hence, we have a few brands here coming in that, I mean, I think like Kitu Kali has taken over shoes, and you can see what's happening with that brand of shoes. But I mean, they took a concept and they've made it big. But we can learn from them. We can actually observe, learn, and the things that we can do with that knowledge is, I think, there's no limit.
And I think we also need to embrace Buy Kenya, Build Kenya. You know, I mean,
Kenya, Build Kenya.
You know, when you see a Kitu Kali, when you see Joka Jok, are you buying your laptop bag from Joka Jok, or are you just going to, I don't know which shop, to get an import from, I don't know where, you know? Are you promoting local brands yourselves? And I think that's also the challenge to us, to support the people who are actually trying to do something. If you're not doing it, then you can at least support them. And I like that you brought in the education bit, because I had a question for Engineer on the education. But before we get to education, I want to ask Engineer, how can public-private partnerships be utilized to facilitate infrastructure development and investment in key sectors to drive sustainable economic development? How can we use PPP?
You know, for this country, people may not be aware, but PPP has been used. It is not new. Perhaps it is the magnitude of its use that maybe people are not aware. It's not that high. But this country has many positives, key amongst them in terms of legislation, policies that promote such options of investment of infrastructure development. People should be aware that the electricity that we use in this country, a significant portion of it also comes from the private sector through what we call independent power producers. And whereas it may be deemed to be a little bit more expensive, they have basically come in to provide a utility, and in so doing, it is a form of public-private partnership. It's a public utility that is developed by a private sector, a player in the private sector. So that has been there, but more than anything else, we have a classic example like the expressway today in Nairobi. That is somebody who has put up that, and yes, we pay for it. But for those who would like to go to the airport and are pressed for time, perhaps they can see the value that you get from that particular infrastructure. So public-private partnership, the government has many needs of its budget and the taxes that it collects, and sometimes can only do so much. There are competing interests, key amongst them the recurrent expenditure. And then the amount of money that is left for development perhaps cannot push development of infrastructure at a rate that is probably aligned also with the rate of growth of population, and also at a rate that will spur the economy. And therefore the option, and this is an international approach, many countries have done this, including the developed world, where they have welcomed private sector money or private money to develop that infrastructure. So to me, we have the legislation, we have the policy. Yes, we may be going through learning lessons from that public-private partnership. But to me, it is good because it then frees the government to extend its budget to other areas, key amongst them maybe the social areas that have also a lot of social impact, etc. So to me, it is something that I believe should be embraced. And let me say this, public-private partnership doesn't mean that the money must always come from outside this country. There is money in this country. And it could be in insurance, it could be in mutual funds and other areas. And to me, it is important to encourage that money to build this country. And one of the reasons why it is important is that it is local currency. Therefore, we have reduced foreign exchange fluctuation risk when we're investing Kenya shillings and paying in Kenya shillings. The other thing that I can say is that if it is local money, it also helps us to take our little money and invest and become co-owners of this infrastructure, and in so doing get a return out of it. So to me, it is an area that can help spur development. You are aware that there is talk of doing, let's say, the Nairobi Mau Summit Road, and what would that do? You know, if you look at perhaps Thika Road, when it was done, it was a toll road. But you can see it was expanded many lanes, and there's a lot of traffic that flows there. What does it do? Opens up trade, opens up people being able to communicate easily, quickly, and in so doing, help in uplifting the standard of living. Remember that during the construction stage, you're employing people, and you're allowing local players to also partake in developing their skills and capacity. And then during the operation, the users are the local people also. And therefore, I must say that we don't have much option but to embrace this form of development approach. And in so doing, I think then the rate at which you get infrastructure and avail it to the people is faster.
James, sometimes I think we can sometimes be very, I don't know which is the word to use. Sometimes we keep hearing private-public partnership, but we really don't know what that means, in all honesty. Sometimes we honestly have no idea what PPPP means. Maybe you can also just define it for us, like people who have never gone to school.
So it's a simple definition. It is, first of all, the words are clear. Public, private partnership. That means there is a role of the private sector and there's a role of the public sector. The government, in order to uplift the standard of living of its people and to help spur the economy, looks at developing infrastructure, be it buildings, rail, roads, name it, many different types. Dams, we are talking about using PPP for dams to make water available, sanitation system, drainage systems, name it. So these utilities, ordinarily, the government would provide using the taxes that it collects and also the borrowing that it does. But you see, borrowing, you also have a limitation to how much you can borrow because it depends with how much also you are taxing people. I know taxes are currently a sensitive topic, so I'll not want to dive into it beyond those few words. And therefore, government says, okay, I need this piece of infrastructure. I need the road, and I don't have the money for it, or I have so many competing interests for this money. And then they work up the private sector. Can you develop it? And can we get into an arrangement where you get a return for your investment? And that return could be through a charge levied against the use of that infrastructure. If it is a road, you have a toll road. If it is water, you're buying it. If it is electricity, you're buying it. And the private sector then takes the risk of developing that infrastructure, but there's also a risk that is also taken by government or whoever it is that will be collecting that money. We call them the off-taker. In the event that perhaps the consumption of that utility is not adequate to meet the returns that you expect. Remember, the private sector will go borrow money to build that infrastructure. And ordinarily, they will be borrowing at most likely commercial interest rates, although they could be competitive depending with the currency. The government could borrow it cheaper, but the government's capacity may be limited in terms of its capacity to borrow more and more and more. Therefore, here in the developed world, even schools, some of them are developed by private sector. You tell a private sector person, develop the school, we will be paying you something. It's called an annuity every month. And you look after the school infrastructure. I'll bring in the teachers, for example. So it allows the private sector money to come in and help in the development of a country. So it is not the normal business per se, but it's a public good or utility that is required, which the government allows the private sector, and there is an arrangement for that private sector to be compensated for the investment that they have put in. Ordinarily, that infrastructure will spur development, it will spur business, it will allow trade, etc. I hope that elaborates what that unique and good arrangement is.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I think we are now clear about what you're talking about when you talk about PPP. Good to see you, Engineer Yinka. I don't know whether your internet is much better. I know Nairobi, we are suffering because of the undersea
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Speak again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was told that because I was originally from Nigeria is why my videos didn't work and my internet went down because you guys were having discussion and I'm supposed to be out of, but I'm back now.
Engineer Yinka, I must tell you that you have really missed out on a very rich conversation on Africa. But fortunately for you, we are consumers of Nigerian movies. So for that reason, you are our brother.
I hear you. I've actually been hearing a lot of what is being said. Unfortunately, I couldn't put this video on. No, my microphone was not working. So I am on with you. Please go ahead.
All right. Now, it's a good thing that you're back because there's something that you needed to tell us. What are some of the ways that innovation, that was the question that we had asked. What are some, in what ways can innovation be fostered across different sectors in Africa to address pressing challenges and seize emerging opportunities? How can we address the challenges and or rather, what are the challenges and how can we innovate and address and also seize the opportunities available?
Thank you for that. As much I was listening to as much as what is being said, but I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to go into bullets of some of what could be done to make sure we get the best of innovation on the continent. Number one, the beauty about our continent is, in my own view, we are at in everything. So it is important that our people are more knowledgeable on things that are going on in the world, so we are not left behind. Our government and our leadership needs also to do put a lot of effort in promoting startups and entrepreneurship. Because in a lot of these countries, other countries around the world, the government has a lot of programs that promote SMEs. And those are the people that do most of the labor, do the most in recruiting people globally. So there needs to be a lot of intentional effort on our own government to make sure they support SMEs. We also need to look more into collaboration and networking. We don't network enough. A lot of us operate in silos. In doing so, we are not getting synergies that can actually propel us up a lot faster. The other two things that actually came to my mind as we were talking earlier is technology transfer. How do we have the system to pass information to our people so that they can actually know? The example I like to use is, if you go back 20, 30, 40 years when you used to use the rotary phone and you go to P&T and you put a box in the wall and then you do one of these to dial to talk to people around the world. the world is in 5G now. For a lot of our countries or parts of our geography that do not have telephone system, they don't need to go back to those 20, 30 years ago. They can leapfrog to 5G. So the system needs to provide technology transfer and adaptation to where we are today. And I think more than anything else, funding is always an issue on our continent. There needs to be more investments through they would call the continental banks, an opportunity for Africans to have access to cheap finances. Those are some of the big things that come to my mind, and maybe a little bit of more regulatory reforms, as well as inclusion in innovation. I think those are some of the things that we can do or help our people with to advance ourselves to where the other continents are today. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for going into bullet mode. But that is totally, I hope you guys are also hearing, and I am going to open the floor for questions in a bit. But Vicky, please tell us, how can governments and stakeholders ensure that economic growth and development are inclusive? And this one, that they're benefiting all segments of the society and addressing the issues of inequality and poverty. I've seen actually a question on how can we support, how can the government come in, or what can be done? Mukayangi has said, for example, in the last decade, we have seen so many industries close down because of unfavorable conditions. I believe that's part of the question. So what can governments and stakeholders do?
Okay, so one of the things we've realized, especially as the Federation of Women in Kenya, of women entrepreneurs in Kenya, is the lack of representation, and it is so stark. For example, just at the KEBS, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, yeah, we realized that our women were going there to ask for the standardization mark for items that didn't exist, such as kefir, and they would have to go and rewrite the standards with them. But because there's no representation for SMEs, yeah, really SMEs and women SMEs as that, they still get a lot of red tape, and they still get a lot of things not working for such a small thing, by the way, standardization, which can stop you from putting a product in a supermarket. And that in itself cuts you off from a lot of the market. So that's just one example. We have a whole lot of other bodies that don't have the right representation that allows them to understand vitu per ground, how they really are. And so you find sometimes the decisions that are made, I'm glad that Yinka mentioned about SMEs, do not favor these markets, the entrepreneurs who are really in any market, the ones who push for growth, they're brave, they're sometimes, risk takers and all those things. So I believe in that place of policy formulation, we have also kind of lost the place of the professional. And I think that's something that we are ailing from. And that is why sometimes we find that some of the things are taking too long. Maybe they're not passing new policies or frameworks, but we're taking too long to recognize the changes that have already happened and how we can support the current trend or the current economic status, and to move us to what we're calling this particular nation that is inclusive. So policy framework has always been the domain of the government, and it will still remain the domain of government, and a lot of support is required therein. I believe we play a part in the lack of seeing the policies and frameworks that we want. And I think personally, I can also say I'm a culprit, because we as citizens tend to shy away with all our knowledge and with all the information that we have from what we call politics. And the thing about politics is that without playing it, you're not going to change anything. And politics is not a dirty game. Politics is how we actually get our voices to the forefront. It's how we get things changed. It's how we address systemic issues that do not allow us to move. So we should stop, especially as professionals, because professionals, you have a lot. You have experience, you have the actual education, which is important. One of the things I've also found is that the people with actual education sometimes, again, will not be at the forefront then trying to make noise. It is a difficult job. but it is one that must be done. Advocacy, lobbying, pushing must be done. And I think as Kenyans, we must get to that place where we realize that we have the power, if we want, to actually change a few things that are happening in this nation. If you don't have to lift a finger, you just have to make enough noise until something is done. I think the other way, of course, is education, upskilling, raising awareness, education, upskilling, raising awareness, education, upskilling, raising awareness, without bringing people, to a certain level and keeping on adding that over and over again. I mean, you can only be a few people here with so many people at a certain level. And Kenya, I must say, at least most African countries I've been to have invested in education, but maybe we need to also think about the others that are still lagging behind, because for us to reach that tipping point, that awareness has to be done consistently over a period of time, so that we are, as I said, don't have a ceiling of knowledge. And then with things like what we're talking about, FESTAC, supporting things like FESTAC, supporting intra-country initiatives. I think those are other things that we can start. I mean, we can see support for the things that we want to. I mean, for integration, the AFCFTA, there's so many other initiatives, but governments need to embrace them so that we can realize that initiative of 2063, the African Union Initiative. I can see Engineer has raised his hand.
Okay, with your permission, Grace,
I was going to laugh because I knew you had to comment on that.
I cannot fail to comment on this because it's something I'm passionate about. I think the one thing that is there is that this country is very advanced in terms of the democratic space, and one of the key things we have in our constitution is provision for public stakeholder consultation. We have seen that the judiciary in this country has pronounced itself on certain pieces of legislation or policy which have not gone through this constitutional requirement of public stakeholder consultation. And, my many years at KEPSA through what we call the sector boards, and now at the board, it's about advocacy. And what is advocacy? I think the shortest phrase that we can use for advocacy is, if you're not seated at the table, then you're part of the menu. And the Constitution allows you to be seated at the table in terms of giving input in matters to do with policy, in matters to do with legislation. Much as we are clamoring as private sector for there to be a framework that will be able to ensure that the inputs of the public that have been presented, in the event that they are not taken on board, then there has to be some level of accountability or explanation as to why they are not, so that the stakeholder engagement process does not become an exercise that is not effective. But Kenyans have embraced this, and a lot of legislation. I have seen very active participation, people taking their inputs when Parliament is formulating bills or reviewing bills, developing bills. And remember, these bills actually come from potentially, let's say, the policymaker, which could be a ministry. When they go to Parliament, the Parliament allows you to have a say in terms of giving inputs. And those inputs, you've got to be constructive. You've got to also recommend what it is that you want done. What is the other option that you think would be more effective, etc. So to me, the country has advanced, and people, again, I think what Vicky you're saying is creating awareness, letting people know that, yes, you can present. And then also the leaders that you vote for, it is important, because you would want them when they go to these August houses or whatever positions, elective positions, that there are people that you're going to hold accountable going forward. So to me, I have traveled this continent, and there are not many places where people do what we are able to do. Hakietu, going to court, stopping critical pieces of legislation, irrespective of which office they have come from. It's not many places that you can never see this being done. So that democratic space is something that we need to continue to build on. And in so doing, things like what you've mentioned, Vicky, about representation, people agitate for it in a manner that you are making progress in terms of that. I have seen some level of affirmative action, be it in procurement, which gives preference in certain areas to women, to young people. And you know, for us, we're in the older generation, we are now getting to become the minority. So we are likely to come and also ask for favors going forward. But that was with a light touch. But I thought I'd just comment that, yes, there is advocacy in this country, and it can be enhanced. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Engineer. In the spirit of the African Union 2063 document, I usually feel there's still a bit of work to be done there, and because we like I said, we cannot be a few at the top, and there's quite a bit of things we need to do in terms of bringing ourselves to a level where at least we can move together. And I echo those sentiments. Yeah. The
key thing is to make progress. But
yes,
maybe to add on to what else can be done to reduce inequality.
Inequality.
Grace, we have to deal with certain things that lead to leakage of monies collected or borrowed. So we have to look at devices that see money not going to the places where it should. And perhaps that money going to things that may not be of priority. Because the money is limited, therefore it is important to make sure that it is as effective as it should be. And therefore, when we have cases of that money going to areas that it should not be, that is something that certainly needs to be addressed. My fear is that if it is not addressed and the inequality continues, we have seen, the young have a lot of energy, and they're not just going to sit still and feel that they're disenfranchised because the playing field is not level. I think it is something that we continuously need to encourage and focus on so that resources go where they should be. And I think one of the good things why devolution came, it has its challenges, but at least people have a mechanism, although probably not as strong as it should be, in terms of at least asking what is happening and also prioritizing what is it that the resources we have should be going towards, as opposed to being a one-way discussion going down. It is not an easy thing, but it's certainly something that should be on the radar.
All right.
Grace, I just felt to add something to that. Both speakers have spoken extremely well. And I think another thing you'll find in a lot of countries or continents, it's derivatives on how the government plans where the incomes are coming in from different parts of the country. What is critical, as you can hear, a lot of times is, the what happens to the minority. In some cases, you have the places where the minority geography is actually where the funds that's feeding the country is coming from. But because they are either not educated or they're not exposed, they are being marginalized. So a true system is interested in advancing the cause and the knowledge of its citizen could have a derivative way of sharing what comes through in terms of natural resources or income to the government. And that's another way to uplift every geography of a nation rather than being marginalizing one over the other. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that discourse. And probably, Engineer Yinka, you can tell us, how can regional integration efforts be strengthened to promote intra-Africa trade and cooperation to enhance economic development and stability?
I think this is where I thought Vicky was my salesperson, and this is where I get to be the one selling Festac to you. And maybe if you understand why we started Festac, you will see where we came from and where we're going. As I said earlier, Festac was brought in to demystify the colonial masters to us. I was brought in to open our minds, to understand we are the same people. It was brought in to, in our mind, erase the lines that was drawn to say Africa, this is Kenya, this is Tanzania, and then so a line that exists on paper that none of us have seen the lines before, especially the tribes that live on that line. So after, I would say, myself and some of our directors' lives of either in sciences or in other forms of job, we realized to move Africa together, to improve trade between us. Craziness is when you are doing the same thing for 30 years, you are not seeing an impact, and you continue to do the same thing. One of the things that is lacking between us is integration between our regions. If once you travel, let me just stay with the east and the western regions of the continent. When you're on the west side of Africa, you are envious of East Africa, thinking they have a great integration. Maybe because it's easy to drive back and forth. Maybe because driving back and forth doesn't have as much headache crossing the border as in West Africa. When you come to East Africa, East Africans feel that West Africa is better integrated because of ECOWAS. But yes, we are all on paper integrated, but we are not, even regionally, talk less of the continent. There's a lot that needs to be done. One of the big things we are talking about in Festac is this idea of one Africa passport. So a few people held the passport in their hand, they took a picture with it, and I don't think I will get one of those in 15 or 20 years. So what's the value of that? Maybe what we need to do is to say, with your passport, you can go anywhere. If we do that, we can integrate our people better. So what we've done with Festac is to say, we need to go back to basics, where we first of all have to understand one another. And the only way you can understand one another is if you and I sit together, break bread together, talk about the soft issues, where you get to know me first. And then when I come back tomorrow, I want to do business with you, you would better accept me. So we put that's a big part of Festac, to say we need to integrate, we need to network. Part of it also is that we need to travel. If you travel to my village, you will realize that my grandfather doesn't look too far from your grandfather. And somebody else has told us we don't look alike at all. So we all stay apart from one another and we don't talk. So we put travel and tourism into Festac on purpose. We put trade focus and saying, let's do trade. And more than anything else, let's celebrate the continent. And we also did something that was not done in 66 and 77, which is inputting our children into the festival through three main points of their interest. Number one, most of our children like movies, like Grace said before about Nollywood, but it's not limited to Nollywood. We are bringing in Riverwood and all the other woods on the continent to make sure that even as that is a source of big foreign income into Africa, the continent can focus on it, develop that industry, because that industry is big outside of the continent. And we can even help our actors, rather than you having a fan base of 20 million, because your country size is 20 million. If we integrate them, you can have a fan base of 1.2 billion, and the industry can actually get better, and the continent can get the benefit of it. So we felt movies are important, so we focus on that, and through integration, a big part of Festac is movies. Another big part of it is sports. You could be not be right with your word and say Africans are built sports machines. So be it. Why can't it be a foreign income to us? We have a lot of our children outside of the continent in sports. Does the continent have a procedure, a policy, a strategy to make sure we encourage those things and we get the value back to the continent? So we have sports section, all different. One good thing about Kenya is, we came when we did the first two festivals. We used sports as a soft environment to bring the children in. So this is on our third year of bringing back Festac after 45 years hiatus. When we got to Kenya, we told the guys in Kisumu that this sport we are bringing is just for kids to get to know one another and get better. They say, oh, no. In Kenya, practically almost all the sports federation in Kenya participating, which is a great tool to bring people together. Even we have the EAC coming and say, with all the things you are doing with cultural diplomacy, sports diplomacy, we're also going to bring our people. So for us as on the platform, we can't sit down and say, well, I'm going to sell you a bag of rice. No, what I'm going to sell you is the power for you to sit next to your brother and your sister from another country or other part of Africa. Realize you are both one. Exchange your phone numbers so that when you need to make a trade or a purchase tomorrow, you don't call a broker in London to brokerage a sale between Tanzania and Kenya. So that's the big part of integration on what we can do to make the continent a better place. Thank you.
And maybe I can add on that because I've also seen it work in our women forums when we don't have to have actual physical trade fairs sometimes. Even having the digital platforms, like I know we have one in, I think for the AU called the 50 Million Women Speak, and such initiatives that shortcut like what Yinka is saying. You don't have to export your goods outside for them to be imported inside. Those are some of the ways that I've seen integration start to work. I guess the only thing there is how do we trickle it down even to the MSME as well to be able to take advantage of that particular platform. So digital platforms, taking advantage of the digital age is another way that we can actually enhance interaction and trade.
Grace?
Yes.
I just wanted to add that part of that integration also is identifying economic corridors so that infrastructure can be developed in a manner that will allow goods in both directions to move, and in so doing, help different countries exploit the synergies that they have. So today I know that you'll hear about economic corridor. You remember we used to talk about LAPSET. That was meant to be, that is a corridor that is meant to open access to South Sudan, Ethiopia, and by extension, that corridor could then even go into Uganda. So the fact that you can have a focused thinking between countries to try and look at trading routes and what it is that different countries can do in the development, that I think is important. How is it that China talks about their road, Belt and Road, whatever they call it, far away from where they are, but they are developing that Belt and Road to open up corridors for them to move their goods to those far-flung markets, and key amongst them, Africa. And therefore, this integration is very critical in terms of, like you said, Engineer Yinka, bringing down these borders that were placed on us to make us think that we are different. We are not. And we were not before the borders came in. And therefore, I see the encouragement, the fact that you can focus on what you have and see to it that you can trade with what you have, I think to me is an excellent opportunity. So these trading blocks And ultimately, the big one for the whole of Africa, I think, is critical. Then infrastructure development, you're developing it, not just focusing on your country alone, but also looking at how it ties in with the rest of the region. And what it does is that it gives people opportunities from that particular region or block. And I think that is very positive.
All right, all right. Wow, this conversation should have come in like in January so that people can start implementing things. By now, we would be doing M&E of first quarter achievements. Nonetheless, we are doing well. Monica says, I think we also need to learn the history of our African heritage and appreciate our identity as Africans. That way, we also compare and learn from others. We are also self-aware and confident of what we have to offer. And that's absolutely right, Monica, because that is, I mean, appreciating patriotism for the African continent. I think it's something that we cannot take lightly. Onyango says, Vicky, the common Mwananchi, especially the ones back in the village, should be our main focus as thinkers. We need to try and solve the marginalization in pursuit of equity. Perhaps we need to brainstorm more on reversing the rural-urban migration. That is another comment. And Wafula James says he has noted your contribution. Right. So I know we can't be here forever. You guys have seen the passion that my panelists have about the African content, and myself and Catherine are soaking in it. And I hope you also are. I've seen a number of people saying we are tuned in here from YouTube, and people are saying, yes, that's a good conversation. But in the interest of time, allow us to just go on and get your parting shot, because then you ought to go and have your dinner. For those who haven't had their dinner, or take your tea before you get 1 hour to sleep. So anyone can go first in terms of your parting shot. Who wanna go first?
I think I can.
Okay.
Oh, ladies first. Ladies first, sorry.
Okay. My parting shot. I think sometimes if we look at the change of Africa as if it's a thing that happens tomorrow, we might get disillusioned and we might lose faith. So I'd like to remind us that, I mean, for me, every time I sit here and I go into the space of advocacy, I have to remind myself that I am part of a movement that is preparing the future of Africa. I possibly might not see some of the great milestones that will come whenever those will come, but the work cannot stop. And so when you see festivals like Festac, when you see initiatives around the AU, when you talk about corridors, when you talk about being able to travel, if nothing is done now, then nothing will come later. So my thing is to look at Africa, the Africa we want to be, live the change that you want to see. And living the change that you want to see is one, where can you place it? Advocacy. Two, is it buying Kenya, building Kenya? Those are the things that are within your control that you can do. And supporting forums that seek to integrate information. So I think it is a generational change, but we need to be involved so that, I mean, whatever is going to happen in the future, we can be part of those architects. And again, I will never stop speaking about education. I sit with women who have no idea about what KRA is about. And it's just education. If we took the time, that means that this woman will start her SME, and that small SME, the children she's bringing up will look up to a mother who has a business that thrives. That generation that follows her will do better, and the generations that follow will keep doing better. So we cannot, I feel like that is the one thing, despite of anything, that we can strive. What are the key things we need for business to thrive? Those are the key things we should be focusing on, especially for us in Nairobi. We know everything, but there are places out here when you go out that you really understand what it means to be marginalized. And a lot of that is due to the lack of information and the lack of raising of awareness. I think that would be my parting shot.
All right, thank you, Vicky. And that's a challenge to all of us to be part of the change we want to see. And I think Yinka and Engineer James, as you answer your questions, there's one that has just come in now. Good evening. Enjoying this conversation. Which skills do you think Kenya and Africa require in order to push our economies forward and add value to our communities? If you can, kindly answer from the POV of people in their 20s. Secondly, now, Sasa, you're asking James and Yinka to answer for people in their 20s. Anyway, secondly, which skills or attributes were crucial thus far to your professional and business careers? That is a question from Moinde Kabubi, who said he was willing to miss Manchester City game for this. So yes, go ahead. And Vicky, if you come up with something, you can always contribute. But James, you are next. What are some of the skills? And also give your parting shot as well.
Thank you. You know, if you look at the countries that have developed and are very advanced, the skills of what is called STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, seems to have played a very central role in the development of those countries. None of these countries that have done very well have not developed their, amongst other areas, industrialization. Industrialization meaning that you add value to what you have, be it agriculture, minerals, name it. And therefore, a STEM supported by the other courses, because we must have our lawyers, our finance people, etc. I think those, to me, are courses which countries that have advanced appear to have invested in, even as they invested in other areas or in other skills. In terms of what are those attributes? One is hard work. Expecting something for nothing, I think, is an unfortunate way to ever imagine that you can grow and develop as a country. So hard work. And then I think one thing that was mentioned, I think it was you, Vicky, patriotism. Loving your country, loving your continent, I think is critical. You know, we sometimes describe this continent in a manner like we don't love it, we don't like it, and we expect that to bring change. It can't. Loving something means that you take it upon yourself to try and improve and advance whatever it is, or whichever country you are in. And therefore, I think we need to love our country and not to always think about how bad it is. We should ask ourselves, what can we as individuals do in our own little way? And you know, Martin Luther King was famous for telling people to excel in whatever it is, no matter how small it is. Excel in it and excel in a good manner. My part, and then of course, integrity is critical. Doing what you mean. And I think caring for the other person, helping the other person, because that used to be our culture many, many years ago. Lastly, I think Africa is the best continent. I wouldn't choose any other continent. I think that it is endowed with so many positive attributes, so many resources, key amongst them the youth. You cannot have a population growing at this rate and imagine that God made a mistake to give us all these good people, in young as they are. So to me, I think this is the continent to be, and to know that nobody is going to change this continent the way we want it other than ourselves. And to wait for solutions coming from outside all the time, I think you get it totally, totally wrong. It has to start with us. We must take responsibility for this country. Where it is not working, it is up to us to make it work. And I would say this, let us love this continent. Let us love one another. Let us help one another. And God bless Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Vicky, I've seen a huge story posted for you on the chat on your comment about architectural and urban planning. And I can see you're typing an answer, so I'll leave you to keep typing.
Let me type it.
Okay. And Engineer Yinka, as you give your parting shot, Mr. Anthony Okore says, can we also address the issue of hospitals in Africa to avoid migration of sick persons abroad? A sick nation cannot thrive. Yinka, you can take that as you give your parting shots. You're on mute, Yinka.
Thank you all very much. You are very correct. A sick nation cannot thrive. Yes, some professionals, investors are doing a good job in building hospitals. Again, access to finance is a big deal. So our leaders and our government need to do more in quality and high standard hospital infrastructure to support the populace that cannot afford the expensive medical services. But there are certain things that actually James said that I want to dig into. The power of loving Africa. First of all, for everybody on the line, if you look at the shape of Africa, it's the best shape of all the continents in the world. That alone should tell you we are sitting pretty. Number two, all the indices of what the world needs today to go up is in Africa. The youth, the land, the agricultural or arable lands, the minerals, we have them in abundance. Not only do we have them in abundance, in a lot of cases, you won't even extract the minerals. You don't go 20 can actually scrape. Unfortunately, the people outside the world have been scraping our soil and our land for a very long time. We have been blinded for years. Our eyes are open now. And back to my 20-something-year-old youth that talked about what can you do? I would say, like they say in Nigeria, they say, shine your eyes. You need to shine your eyes. That's number one. There's something I want to say here that I've said to some of my Kenyan friends before, that they're actually shocked anytime I tell them that. When I was in my early teens or younger, when we play soccer on the streets of Lagos or Ibadan in Nigeria, and we are selecting friends into different teams and giving the teams names before we go to play street soccer. One of the biggest team that we always call ourselves back in those days is Gor Mahia from Kenya. So if you are selected into the team called Gor Mahia from Kenya, you have a lot of pride in it. Today, what do we do? We look at Serie A, EPL, we look at La Liga. Our own have died because we don't love ourselves enough. So those are the things that I would say need to happen. There are another thing that need to happen for my 20-year-olds. Number one, stay off TikTok, right? Because those things are actually designed. Yeah, it's okay to have fun, but those time distractors, in some cases, algorithms are written to destroy us. We focus on the wrong thing in terms of development. And if all we are doing is those things that they want us to do, we can never get anywhere. Two more things, in addition to what my co-speakers have said, which is critical, but two more things I want to add to that. Travel the continent. Stop going out of the continent, because there's a reason why people are coming into our continent to see the continent, and we don't do that enough to see that. There's one piece of beauty that I will say, because I'm sitting here in Kisumu and I'm 5 minutes away from something very unique. The sunset minutes of sometimes 7 minutes of sunset alone. I can take the survey now and say how many Kenyans have even seen that. Okay, so we need to love to love. And lastly, for my 20-year-olds, At that age, take more risk. If you fail, you can still bounce back. And the good thing about life today is a lot of us that are your parents, times have changed. When we were younger, a lot of us, our parents depended, their future depended on us. So we were very risk averse. You know, if I do something and I go wrong, man, my grandma will be hungry, my grandpa will be hungry, everybody in the village will be hungry. That is kind of going away right now. But when you are in your 20s, take a lot of risk because if you fail, you have more time to try again. And if you are lucky and you win, we all win from your success. Some of my other parting shots, because I don't know who's online, and this is actually a message to the leaders. I might be lucky. Maybe James will go and tell the leadership of AU or Africa tomorrow on some of my parting shots to them because it's very important. We need infrastructural development collectively on the continent. If your house is better than mine, you are not going to enjoy your house. So my house also needs to be nice. Our roads need to link. There are plans for our roads to link as far back as over 50 years ago. Not all of our countries have done what they needed to do to link us together. We need to link. But having the power to link, a lot of things is going to happen. We need to provide cheap money for our business people. A lot of time when you go to borrow money in Africa, if you borrow money outside of Africa, you borrow prime plus. So you can take risk. But in Africa, when you go to sign the paper says you are borrowing at 27%. And then there's that 1% for something, 2% for smiling, 3% for jumping up and down. By the time you leave the bank, you are 35%. There's no way you can make it. So you go get a business to do. The only business you can do with a 35% interest rate is the one that you are not going to do. So you take the money, you don't do the job, and the whole country and continent suffers. We need to develop our skills. There need to be opportunity for people to be educated, and education is not about reading big books. Sometimes trade schools is needed for our people to be able to earn income as quickly as possible. Our leaders need to focus on regulatory programs. Today, a lot of people come into our continent to do business. We don't even know how to regulate them. So they now come in, they drain us, they leave. And then we are sitting at, like James said, 2%, and we are celebrating. And we have a lot of children that don't have anything to do. By putting the regulations in line to say, if you're going to come to my land, my kids are smart enough, they can read and write. I give you 1.5 years to develop my children, or else you leave. And then our leaders should not allow those people and make excuses for them by giving them the waivers and waivers and waivers. If you don't force it, they're not going to do it. So it needed to be forced. And lastly on that, before I get to put you guys in the first act mode, we need to remove all the trade barriers. Some of them will be one. Let me go back into why we are doing first act. It's really critical. And Vicky, I didn't know that you are my plant in this environment tonight. I really appreciate your passion towards first act because I didn't really know you had this much passion about it. As a person that left this continent over 4 decades ago, in the business world, engineering, finance, marketing, I can say I thank God for what I'd accomplished. But I threw all those away when I traveled the continent and I realized what we are lacking. Or grow this continent if we don't come together to know one another. It has not been easy, but it's a commitment to make sure, I would say, somebody asked me, can you ever be as big as 1977? In 1977, I think Nigeria probably spent money with dollars with 9 zeros on the festival. And it did a lot of good for Pan-Africanism, for Blackness. We are building it back. I told my team the day we hit that 77, I will retire. I will go under the palm tree and start drinking palm wine. I'll give the rest for them to do. But in the meantime,
Thank you,
all of
Engineer.
you. We need all of you to join us in moving the continent forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I am so glad that you guys got to meet, and I hope that you guys can continue this conversation even without me, or and see how there's support. And I am always here to give support. So now, in the interest of time, allow me to just say that this has been amazing. It has been a conversation that a lot of people will not have, to be honest, really. Normally we have numbers of 250 to 300. Today people decided, you know what, the highest we got was 110. And Richard and I were just discussing, and you're like, the right people for this conversation are on that call. And those are the change makers we need, you know. We don't need all the other numbers. Those specific ones are the change makers that we need. And of course, I am really glad that we've had this conversation. We're also live on YouTube, so I'm sure it will spread further. And this is the conversation. We will keep having it until we get to the 300 people on the call who really want to understand what Africa is all about. So thank you very much for putting in your thoughts, putting in your expertise, and also putting in your time as a panelist. We really, really appreciate. For those of our audience who are still here with us, we really, really appreciate your time. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for staying the course. And thank you for contribution. I see the Q&A is so long. There's Vicky has been busy answering questions there.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so this has been an eye-opener, really. And I hope that in future we are going to have more conversations, and we are going to keep changing the world and being part of what we want to see and creating the Africa we want for Africa, because that we owe it to ourselves, really. So thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you for preparing for this. And I hope that soon enough we are going to have more conversations about it. And that we are going, all these opportunities we are talking about, we are going to practically see to it that some of them are actually working. And even if it's just a policy here and there, or just a conversation and changing the mindset of our own people, because I think that's a serious thing that we need to have, a mindset shift. So to our partners, thank you very much for your contribution. Finally, Engineer, we got the logo for Festac on our, what do we call it? As part of the partnership. So here it is. That is what I'd been waiting for at the beginning, but unfortunately my designer had a hard day. But don't worry, we shall make sure that people know about it next Tuesday, because we do this every Tuesday from 8 p.m. So thank you very much, our partners. We appreciate you. If you're in Kisumu, Yinka, you need to drive down to Jinja and get to experience the other side of Uganda as well. It's so beautiful. You will enjoy it. And it's just about 3 hours from where you are. Vicky, always a pleasure. See you on Thursday. And Engineer, always a pleasure. There's somebody who is passionate about Africa. Oh my God, you sit with the Engineer for 1 hour, you go back rethinking your life on what you have been doing. And I am glad.
Please, Grace, get me the contact to Engineer Mwangi. We need to have further talk.
That's
all right,
good.
so,
and then please let everybody know the festival is now August 25th to September 1st. We need the world in Kisumu. The world.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks, Engineer.
No problem. The engineers would do good for our government as cabinet secretaries.
Thank you.
And for women on the call, let's join the women of Africa in business and be part of the change we really want to see. So thank you, guys. And from this on, I wish you a lovely, lovely night. And to you, our audience, see you next Tuesday, same time, same place. It's International HR Day on 20th of May. So on Tuesday, we will be celebrating the HR profession, and we are going to have another panel from Africa as well on matters HR. So yes, this is serious matters. We are becoming very integrated. And part of the integration is having webinars that encompass everyone, which is what I am also doing.
Grace, did you say 20th May?
Oh, on your birthday, and happy birthday in advance, Engineer.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we will exchange
Yeah.
your contacts. And Vicky, thank you so much. And
Yes.
see you next week. And let's keep the conversation alive. Have yourselves a good night.
Thank you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Good night,
Thank you very
everybody.
much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night. Bye. Night, Grace. That
Good
was
night.
good.
And dance forever. And this I promise you on my heart. Ooh, I could